Slimehouse TV, myself Theo Kane, welcome back to Toy Talk Tuesday, or Tangent Toy Talk Tuesday as it sometimes goes on here, because we go off on little tangents and little sprees and things like that. But in today's episode, we're going to be talking about a suggested topic. I always put out on my social media, let me know different topics, suggest different things that we can talk about on the show. And if I like them and I feel like we've not covered them before in a different way, I always want to talk about them. I always need topics. So always send them on my Instagram and YouTube comments below and stuff like that if you feel like you've got something that would be good to discuss on the show. So, hold tight, Mr. Dan Plastic. He has his own thing on YouTube. They do a Toy Division podcast every week where they talk about the pickups that they got and that kind of thing. It's cool. Go check it out on YouTube. But he gave me a really cool suggestion that I really like and something that I understand a lot and I know other people do as well. And he said, the new releases of old IPs from current companies create more interest in older lines but also devalue the interest of current collectors. For example, Super 7, new Toxic Crusaders look awesome but also somehow dilute how I feel about the original line. I think I might just be being an elitist prick though. Ha! I guess we see some things as ours and don't like to share with newcomers, Boglins, Madballs, Earthworm Jim. I love all these lines, but I'm also happy with what is already out there. And back in the day, apologies, that probably makes no sense at all. It makes a lot of sense, dude. And I goes, no, it makes perfect sense. And I completely understand where you're coming from. A lot of this stuff was not loved for many years. A lot of this stuff, we might have liked it for 10 years. Toxic Crusaders being a prime example of that. I fucking rep Toxic Crusaders from day. And 6-7 years ago, not many people cared about Toxic Crusaders. You could pick them up really cheap. I've got horror stories where I've left them really cheap on the card at the time because I thought I'll pick them up another day. And then now they've gone up and been expensive. And now Super 7 are like releasing Toxic Crusaders again. I've reviewed some of them on this show. Toxic Crusaders, Toxic Avenger, now that license is again at the forefront. Lots of companies are releasing merchandise of it. And some people would feel like, oh, do you know what? It's not cool anymore. It's not cool and unknown and underground. It's a bit more mainstream now and it makes me not like it as much. Prime example was the other day when I was filming Pizarro's Pieces Toy Room. We were talking about Masters of the Universe and I was looking at his collection and I'm like, didn't you used to have every single figure? And he said, you know what? Like I used to have all the Masters of the Universe, all the Motu 80s Mattel figures. And then now I've just kept my hoard. Just Hodak, and he said because it was around so much and getting so many re-releases and stuff that it just didn't feel cool to me anymore. It didn't feel like something I held dear to my heart anymore like I used to. So first of all, I'd be interested to know in the comments below, is there any lines that you think very similar? Or is there any lines that you can see going that way? Is there any lines that you're like, do you know what, I loved them for years and there's been a couple of re-releases, but I'm starting to see one too many to a point that, do you know what, I'm not that bothered anymore. And I really get it because I'm like it with films and TV shows and things like that. There'll be something like that I've watched for years and really liked and you mention it to people and you're like, have you seen this movie? You're like, no, I've never heard of it. And then next minute it gets a re-release or it gets a remake or for whatever reason it gets light shone upon it again. And then it's cool and everyone's talking about it and everyone's wearing it, t-shirts with it on and then you're just like, yo, what the fuck? Like, I was trying to talk about this years ago and no one cared. Oh, fuck it, you can have that show now. I'm not bothered. I'll move on to the next thing. I'll move on to the next movie. And I really get it. There's movies that I loved growing up, but now I would never wear a t-shirt of it because it's just like too mainstream. And it's not because I think I'm better than anyone or that I'm an elitist prick or I want to gatekeep it or anything like that, because this stuff I like the gates to be wide open. It just might be that I personally don't want to step in that gate anymore. I mean, again, it happens with bands. You'll get like an underground band that like when they're underground, they're really cool and not many people know about them and then they blow up and become really big and all of a sudden you're like, oh, do you know what? I don't like it anymore. Have you ever heard a song that you thought was fucking awesome and then all of a sudden it gets big for whatever reason? Kate Bush, prime example in Stranger Things. My mum raised me on Kate Bush. My mum fucking looks like Kate Bush. When I was a little kid, my mum used to work nights. My dad would put Kate Bush on the TV when I was like 3 years old and go, look, mummy's on the TV. And I would watch the telly and think that my mum was on there. So I love Kate Bush. But recently, I've heard that song from Stranger Things just like a few too many times now that when it comes on, I'm like, oh, fucking, I'm sick of hearing that song. And that's a bit what it gets like. That's the best analogy that I can make for this kind of thing. Quentin Tarantino's a prime example of this. He's really into like really old, obscure music. So he'll make a movie and then he puts a song in it that nobody's heard for 30, 40, 50 years. And then it makes it cool again. And then all of a sudden, it's on every advert on YouTube and it's on every TikTok and every Instagram reel and all this other shit that they put out now because they're all trying to compete with each other with the music, dancey, lip sync shit, which I fucking hate, but that's that's a whole different subject. That's what I feel sometimes with toys, and I think that's like a perfect analogy for all this cult stuff, because it's cult and it's something that we've loved for a long time. But what we also have to remember is it's not ours, even though sometimes we see it as ours, because we've talked about this before on this show. It could be that toy line, that cartoon, that movie that got you through the shittest time in your life. So you have an affinity with it, you have a connection to it, and then all of a sudden when you see everybody loving it again, it's like, oh, that felt like it was my thing. But we just have to remember that none of this stuff is our thing. It's all made by corporations and companies, and so much of this shit, like Masters of the Universe, for example, that wasn't loved for many years. It came out in the 80s and had a little bit of a resurgence in the early 2000s, and then people didn't care about it again. And then in the last few years, like not like Masters of the Universe classics, because they were still pretty like underground. You had to order them online and things like that. You had to be a real fan to get them. In the last couple of years now, you can go into Smith's and they've got Castle Grayskull. They've got all the lines back on the shelves, and they're not just the Netflix like new figures. They're like throwback figures that look exactly like the Mattel releases. So that now is mainstream again. He-Man is back mainstream. There's hundreds of Funko Pops, and you go in Forbidden Planet, they've got Masters of the Universe key rings. You go into Smith's, they've got, like I said, they've got a fucking Castle Grayskull full size on sale in Smith's right now. So you get to a point where you're like, yeah, do you know what? It's not mine anymore. And I accept that, but it belongs to the world again. What we've also got to remember is that, like, in the next 20 years, people probably don't give a fuck about Masters of the Universe, and it's back to being a cult thing. So the way you have to kind of see it, and the way I see it, is like, you have to let it fly the coop, and it's found its own feet, and it's found its audience again, and you can always love it, and you'll always rep it in your own little way. You'll always enjoy seeing it around, and you see it on the shelf, and it'll spark a little memory in your head, it'll spark a little feeling, a little mood, a little vibe, and make you feel something when you see it on the shelf. But you don't necessarily have to rep it like you used to rep it. You haven't got to big it up anymore. You don't have to be in its corner anymore, because it's off and away, and it's doing its thing. And that's the way that you have to see this thing. And I used to be a lot like this. I used to be like, oh, it's not cool anymore. And I still am like it in some ways. Prime example, Squid Game come out. I watched it day one because I saw the trailer and I thought, oh, that looks like a bit of me. So when I saw the trailer for Squid Game, I thought, I'm watching that day one. And I did. We watched it day one, binged it in 2 days, the whole thing. Got up next morning, I was thinking about it, and I drew a picture and I put it on my Instagram, and I'm like, yo, fucking hell, this new thing, Squid Game, it's beautiful, I can't get it out of my head. And then within a few days, like, everyone in the world were talking about Squid Game. Give it a few weeks, I never wanted to look at Squid Game ever again. Everywhere I went, I saw bootleg fucking Squid Game. I went into HMV and they had a whole Squid Game section with t-shirts and cups, and even that I did this on the red light, green light girl. I heard that noise on so many TikToks and things, and then now I felt like deleting the picture that I'd drawn off my Instagram, because I was like, do you know what? This thing's everywhere. I don't want to ever see it ever again. Not for a long time, I don't want to see it. Even though I fucking loved it, when you see something out there, and it's so out there that it's fucking everywhere, it can make you not like it anymore. And it's completely natural and normal to do that. We just have to remember that we don't own this stuff, and people like this stuff because it's cool. And we talked all about this before on a Toy Talk Tuesday, that there's lots of things that I grew up loving, and at the time was seen as like, not really a nerd or anything like that, because I was never like a guy that got like bullied or anything like that by my friends. I was always very much like the ringleader of my crew. But they would like take fire shots and take the piss and say like, yeah, do you know what, you're into Marvel and zombies and Star Wars and things like that. And even if they didn't take the piss, they didn't really understand it. It wasn't something that was like huge in the mainstream like it is now. Star Wars, Walking Dead, Marvel and all this kind of thing, and now it's huge, and it's not even geeky anymore. Like, everybody watches the MCU. Maybe not as many people anymore, because people are very divided on that, but again, it's a different subject. But there's lots of stuff that you can enjoy growing up, and then now it's cool again. Stranger Things made fucking Dungeons and Dragons cool. People who would have never even thought about Dungeons and Dragons before now all love Eddie Munson, and they all want to listen to Metallica, and they all want to play Dungeons and Dragons and wear a t-shirt with the Hellfire Club on it. And a lot of them people would have been the kind of people that would have never dreamed of talking to somebody that wore a Metallica t-shirt and played Dungeons and Dragons back in school. But now it's cool and it's normal and it's mainstream. You will have feelings about it where you feel like, do you know what, it's mine and I loved it for years, and now you've taken it and you've made it something that it isn't. But it's just the way that it is, and if something's cool, people will also like it. It only takes the right platform to showcase it in a certain way that everybody will want to jump on it, and that's just what happens with this stuff. And when you see like Mad Balls get a re-release, you're like, course, they're fucking prime for a re-release. They're dope as shit. Like, I've been telling people for years they're dope, but it's only in the last few years that, like, they've become so big again. When I see, like, Tim Clark's Boglins, he was going from, like, a big mainstream release back in the early 90s, and then he went to, like, making his own out of resin and rubber and pouring his own at home, and then now they've got this huge mainstream release again, and you can go in Menkind, in Meadowall, in a supermarket, in a mall, and buy them off the shelf. Like, I don't see that as something that's like, oh, I wish they were underground again. I'm just like, do you know what? I'm glad that that weird little thing is fucking big again and people love it, and I don't mind it. I don't mind it, and because I'm also under the understanding that I like to see it go and stretch its legs, and I don't have to fight in its corner anymore. So that's the way that we have to see it, we really do. Otherwise, yeah, you will be annoyed. But I completely get it, and I am still like it with some cult movies and things like that. Just when it comes to toys, I just see them as something that in the 80s and the 90s, all this stuff that we love was all on the pegs in Toys R Us anyway. It was always in the forefront then. It just hasn't been repped for many years. People forgot about it, and it's just been like put on a platform and shown to the masses again, and that's why companies are jumping on the licenses. And don't forget that a lot of these companies that are jumping on these licenses, I've got friends that run toy companies that buy licenses and re-release them and stuff like that. It's people who grew up loving this stuff. They were kids when this stuff come out, so they're just buying the licenses for things that they love and re-releasing them. So yeah, try not to let it get to you, damn plastic, my guy, and anybody else that feels that way, because I completely get it. But let's try and think of it from a different mind frame moving forward. But I would love to know your thoughts and your opinions on today's subject, so don't forget, as always, to let me know in the comments below. Also, if there's anything that you want to see me discuss on a future episode of Toy Talk Tuesday, then please let me know in the comments below. Also, if you want to support this channel on Patreon, you can head over to patreon.com/SlimeHouseTV. There's a couple of different tiers on there, including a tier called the Slime Alliance, where you pay as little as $5 a month or more, and you get access to these episodes 2 weeks in advance. I'm also going to start dropping exclusive content on there when I get to 30 Slime Alliance members. At the minute, I'm teetering on between 20 and 25, I think, so we're not very far off. When I get to 30 Slime Alliance members, I'm going to drop exclusive episodes on there just for the Slime Alliance every month as well. So if that sounds like a bit of you, head over to patreon.com/SlimeHouseTV and get involved in becoming a Slime Renegade or a Slime Alliance member. You can also hit me up on Instagram at Theo_Kane_Slimehouse. I'm very active on my Instagram. Drop me a DM if there's anything there that you want to tell me, if you've got any toys to sell, anything you want to swap, anything you want to donate to Slimehouse, or if you just want to like tag me in your latest car boot haul, tag me in a cool picture that you've drawn, or maybe you just watch this show and want to talk to me. I'm very active on my social media, so holler me. In the meantime, I'm Theo Kane. If this is your first time here at Slimehouse TV, don't forget to go back and binge the back catalogue. But until the next episode, I'm going to have a rest, have a break. I say a rest, I've never rested. I'm going to go straight back and do my editing for the next episode, and I'm always doing things. But yeah, let me crack on with that, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Until then, I'm gone. Pow!